Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. Outbound, written by Provisional Rebel. Transcribed from the documentary Outbound Flight, The Battle of New Catalonia. Interview with Cole Thrax, High Marshal of the 16th Expansion Fleet. The Empire has never been one to shy away from conflict. We have subjugated worlds before, although I personally don't put stock in some of the horror stories of occupation. We are not cruel monsters from beyond the stars, like some primitives would paint us as. We were merely efficient, as this is the virtue upon which we stake our name. The efficiency we brought to every battle won us victory, time and time again. It wasn't until we encountered the humans that we met our match on the battlefield for the first time since the Unification Wars. At first, we thought the people of New Catalonia were merely primitives. We saw no gate in the system after all. As we observed them from orbit, we assumed that it would be a simple matter of deploying a troop transport to install an imperial governor and deploy a barracks for an occupation force. This proved a fatal mistake on our part, given what we now know of the colony. They were a faction which had arrived on the planet on one of the human generation ships. Fanatics, as far as even the humans were concerned. Isolationists who were so driven to protect themselves from the ever-increasing tyrannies of their governments that they threw themselves into the void, seemingly without reservation. The actual landing was unopposed, of course. They couldn't have known that we were coming. To me and my staff it seemed like another job well done and another world brought into the fold. It would be another few weeks until we were able to depart the system, as more sections of the return gate were moved into position, and the populace seemed docile. Although we now know that they were seething in their underground. We hadn't the faintest idea of that, and so we continued as efficiency demanded. We deployed judicative forces to bring imperial law to the people, and they seemed to quite naturally fall in line with it. Our laws are, after all, fair. It seemed merely a formality, as only the most savage primitives lacked the foundational morals to adhere to them. Seeing no reason to stay and knowing our survey ships had completed their scans, we gave our final briefings to the governor, and the fleet made its return to the core worlds of the Empire. We would return in 3 months with additional provisions and colonists. At least, that was the plan. Oh, we arrived exactly on schedule. I would have no other way. But as we moved into the system, we did not receive any transmissions from the surface. The city appeared empty from orbit, and so, assuming the worst, I deployed half of my complement of Marines. They quickly found signs of battle. The barracks had been overrun with stains of blood and some strange red fluid which we assumed had to be the human equivalent. The governor estate had been ravaged as well, again covered in the same signs of battle. After I ordered my men to begin securing the city for new colonists, the sporadic reports of contact came in. It was difficult to understand. We fight as one. Securing a clear line between us and the enemy is the first step towards victory. The humans claim to fight in much the same way, but it's almost anarchy, as far as we could see. Small groups of humans would lie in wait, attacking from multiple angles and quickly dispersing into the surrounding area rather than stand and fight. It was frustrating. But our numbers afforded us the advantage, and slowly we fought them into the more rural regions, where our troubles truly began. Behind every tree and blade of grass there seemed to be a rifle. Losses began to mount, especially amongst the officer corps. It seemed the humans had quickly begun to differentiate the leadership from the common soldier, and went out of their way to assassinate them at the outside of every battle. Barbaric! The new environment, however, did begin to allow me the opportunity to support ground forces without risking damage to the infrastructure of the city itself. Still, without hardened targets, naval bombardment is ill-advised, and so weeks began to mount into months. Eventually, I felt the city was secure enough to deploy our colonists. This, of course, required another quarter of my Marines to aid in their defense, along with a new contingent of judicators to keep order. It was troublesome, to say the least, but the planet could now become a fruitful expedition. Of these savages ambushed patrols, raided supplies from the colony, and generally made a nuisance of themselves. But the subjugation of the populace was all but assured, given our vast resources in comparison to Catalan. It seems funny to me now that we could have been so stupid. They called themselves Catalan. Their city was New Catalonia. But I had become lax and overlooked what seems to be such a glaring question now. For where is the first Catalonia? It seemed a trivial thing, until the arrival of what I now know was a human vessel from Earth. They hung in the void, seeming to assess the situation before attempting a directional message to the original colonial government center in their language. All we then knew was that this colony was not a homeworld. And given our fleet's overwhelming firepower at the time, we knew the best way to ensure domination of what was obviously a lesser people. I ordered 2 frigates to move in to interdict the vessel. It seemed like it would be a quick fight. They seemed ill-equipped and began to maneuver away immediately in response to our deployment. But I knew that they had nowhere to run without access to a gate. There was a brief exchange as my men followed standard protocol, firing a warning shot past them as we attempted to order them to surrender. They ignored it. Obviously, they were cowards, prone to panic and run like those who had on the surface. But here, there is no fleeing into the wilderness like animals. The next shots were precise and did substantial damage to the aft engines. We closed the distance, and the boarding parties were prepared. It was then that we got our first taste of what we had sown. The ship's energy readings began to fluctuate, and given their nature, as I viewed it, I had assumed it meant to detonate their core and attempt to destroy our frigates rather than surrender. A supremely inefficient act. So I gave the order to move to a safe distance. Then, as swiftly as it arrived, the vessel vanished. Without a gate, it was one of the only times in my career that I felt unsure of myself. Once our senses had cleared up the picture of what had occurred, we were shocked. Only the precursors had the technological ability to travel the stars without the gates, and we had never had a breakthrough in reverse engineering their arcane sciences. I felt fear creep into my blood, but I knew what was now required of us. I dispatched one of my frigates to gather reinforcements from the Empire, and I shifted my battle lines further out into the system. This would limit my ability to support ground operations against the insurgents, But obviously, the threat of a naval engagement far outweighed the possible losses. I had brought my people to war over some petty colony, a war that for the first time in my life, I lacked the conviction that I could win. I lost that war, then and there, for I had lost it inside my own head. The humans' naval actions later would merely make my torment manifest. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 patrons and channel members. Alithia, Barky, Fudic Yol, Cam Maxwell, Casper Onholtz, White Band 420, Lord Astrokal, Arcalian, and Oakfield.